All right, so let's get started. Hello, my name is Alicia Powell, and I'm the co-founder of Champions for Philanthropy. We are excited to present today's event on the social impact of name, image, and likeness and explore how the new legislation surrounding this might affect student athletes' ability to create social impact, which is of particular interest to us at Champions for Philanthropy. For anyone unfamiliar with our organization, we assist professional athletes and other influencers with their charitable endeavors. Everything from helping athletes start their nonprofit foundations to managing existing foundations. And because having a nonprofit isn't right for everyone, we also assist with creating various charitable projects and initiatives, connecting our clients with other nonprofits, and developing a strategy for giving. You can learn more about our work by following us on social media using the handle Champions for Philanthropy. And now I'll turn it over to my co-founder, Michelle Mays.
Thank you, Alicia. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. We are looking forward to what is sure to be an engaging conversation. I have the honor of presenting our moderator for the discussion, Ms. Marissa Robinson. Marissa is currently Assistant Director of Leadership Development for the National Collegiate Athletic Association, where she is responsible for leading minority program initiatives, the NCAA Student Athlete Leadership Forum, and the D2, D3 Pathway Program. Prior to her current role, Marissa was an NCAA postgraduate intern in leadership development. She was also a top 30 nominee for the NCAA's Woman of the Year. During her time as an intern, she oversaw the DISC behavioral assessments and assisted on numerous programs impacting student athletes, coaches, and administrators. Marissa, we are so pleased to have you here today, and now I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Michelle. As mentioned, I am Marissa Robinson, and I'm really excited to be here with you all this evening. We have a great set of panelists and a lot of things to get through in an hour together. And during this hour together, I have a few set questions for the panelists, but we want to hear from you all. We want to know what questions you have. So please, throughout the duration of this panel, use the question and answer feature, submit questions to us. We will have a set amount of time at the end of this to directly answer your questions, but we want to make sure that we are tailoring this content to the information that you are seeking. So like I said, we only have an hour together, so let's go ahead and get started. I am going to do a brief intro of our panelists and then start with the questions. So our first panelist today is Miss Kyla Carter, who is the mother of NBA Chicago Bulls player Wendell Carter Jr. Mrs. Carter brings a unique perspective as both a former D1 athlete as well as the mother of a prominent player. She's originally from Mississippi, where she is a scholarship athlete graduate of Ole Miss, where she was a business dual major, so not one, but two during her undergrad in banking and finance and then managerial finance. And then she went on to get her master's degree in education. She's very passionate about athletes using their platform and to help others make a difference. So welcome, Mrs. Carter.
Thank you so much, Marissa. Looking forward to the event.
So our second panelist for today is Luke Fedlam, who is a partner in Porter Wright Morris and Authors LLP's corporate department, leading the sports law practice group out of Columbus, Ohio. Luke regularly advises a range of clients, from student athletes who are transitioning to the professional sports world to professional athletes who are navigating their life on the team to retiring athletes, creating a game plan for their life after sports. Luke also leads the advisory firm Anomaly Sports Group. Welcome, Luke.
Thanks, Marissa.
Our third panelist for today is Blake Lawrence. Blake is the CEO and co-founder of Open Doors, an athlete marketing platform purpose-built to deliver growth outcomes for businesses through social media with athletes. This platform also connects athletes, coaches, and administrators to social media fundraising strategies. Blake was a former football student athlete at the University of Nebraska and is the co-host of Big Red Wrap-Up, a weekly Nebraska football talk show. Welcome, Blake.
Thanks for having me.
And our final panelist today is Charlie Ward, who is listed among the most outstanding college athletes in modern history. Charlie was a stellar quarterback in football and an equally impressive point guard in basketball at Florida State University. Charlie went on to play 11 seasons in the NBA. Charlie and his wife, Tanya, are the founders of the Charlie and Tanya Ward Family Foundation. Charlie, who is an FSU ambassador, currently coaches the boys basketball team at Florida High in Tallahassee, Florida. He is also the new co-host of the Believe in the ACC podcast. Welcome, Charlie.
Thank you.
All right. So as you heard, we have a stellar panel here with you today. Multiple different backgrounds and a lot of knowledge that they're looking to share with you. So thank you all for being here to talk about the social impact of name, image, and likeness, or NIL, as some of you may have heard of it. To start us off, though, Luke, can you tell us a little bit more about what is name, image, and likeness, and when did you first hear about it?
Sure. So first, thank you to Champions for Philanthropy for hosting this conversation today. These are really important conversations, as we know a big change is coming. And so name, image, and likeness. Name, image, and likeness, really, it's rooted in this idea of your persona rights, right? The rights of publicity that an individual has to their own name, their own image, and their own likeness. And so the name is just that. So for me, my name, Luke Fedlam, so I have some ownership in my name, right? My image, which is what you would see here, the actual image of me. And there's a lot of conversation around owning images, right? If a photographer takes pictures of somebody, the photographer actually owns the image and they may license it out to others. But we have rights as individuals in our own image. And then likeness would be if somebody were to, take a cartoon, about me and maybe put some glasses on and a little mole right here and things like that to it would be my likeness and people would know who I am, but it would be some cartoon or some other rendition of who I am. Individuals have rights in all of that. And up until this point, the reason that name, image, and likeness is where it's at right now, and we're heading into a big change as it relates to college sports and athletes' use and ownership of their name, image, and likeness, is that up until this point, athletes have not been able to commercialize or capitalize off of the use of their name, image, and likeness in college sports while they played college sports. And so that change is coming. Marissa, when you talk about kind of when did I first hear about it, this conversation really came up, more in kind of the early mid 2000s with the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit versus the NCAA as well as EA Sports, and just this idea that as an athlete, people are making money off of my name, image, and likeness. I should be able to benefit and or participate in that commercialization. And so that's really when we first started hearing it. But it really took states who have said we are making and passing laws to go into effect to allow athletes to have rights of commercialization around those persona rights or those rights of publicity that they haven't had before, that now has caused this change that we're about to see over the next year take place.
Thanks, Luke. How about for the rest of the panel? Charlie, when did you first hear about NIL?
Well, as Luke mentioned, really started with the Ed O'Bannon case. Is when we kind of got the ball rolling in a sense. And when I was in college, there was a lot of opportunities I know that I could have been afforded if there was a name, image, and likeness agreement in place during that time. And I was able to use my name, image, and likeness in some form of fashion, but not from a personal standpoint to be able to gain any wealth from that. But I did sign a lot of autographs in college. And I also had my picture plastered on, on cards in college. And so there was some animosity for all of that because I knew there was some opportunities there. But God afforded me the opportunity after college to use my name, image, and likeness of the things I was able to do because I was afforded the opportunity to go on and play professional sports. And that's not the case for everyone. But I do know that it's important that we understand that our name is the only thing that we have and we have to make sure that we protect it. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the necessary things for us to be able to profit off of that, but also be able to give back. And so I know if I was in college today, that most of my resources on my name would be tied to some form of philanthropic work, because I just know the importance of being able to give back. And having a scholarship, there wasn't much that I needed outside of that.
Yeah, you made some really good points there, especially as we'll go through the questions a little bit later, really talking about how it's tied back into your philanthropic efforts. So openness to the group, and maybe Blake, you could start us off, but with this new NCAA ruling, right? And to give everyone a little bit of background. So back in October of 2019, which I know seems like forever ago, because between March and now feels like 5 years in itself, the Board of Governors of the NCAA went to the 3 divisions and said, hey, take a look at the ruling that we have and see what changes we can make to make it permissible for student athletes to benefit off of their name, image, and likeness. So with this new ruling that's going to come out and be voted on in January, how do you see the college landscape changing?
Name, image, and likeness. And Charlie, you bring up an interesting thing about when were you introduced to NIL. A quick anecdote on this, Marissa, because I think this is near and dear. I played football in Nebraska. My business partner is a teammate of mine. And he, after I was done playing football, we started our first company. He was still on the team. And so we launched the website for our very first company. It was a social media agency helping businesses use Twitter and Facebook. And on the about page, it's like, hey, it's my shiny face. Blake Lawrence, played football at Nebraska, now started this company. And then there's Audie Kanalik, who's my business partner. He's still on the team. And it says in his bio that he's finishing up his career at Nebraska. We launched the website on a Wednesday. Nebraska is playing at Washington on Saturday, that weekend. That day, we were notified by our compliance office that Audie was ruled ineligible, that he couldn't go to Washington to play the game, because we had referenced him as finishing his career in Nebraska. And so we had to go through, leaps and bounds to make sure that, hey, this is a cease and desist. Like he wasn't, we didn't know, or he didn't know. And basically he was reinstated 2 hours before the plane took off for Washington, and Nebraska went up and whooped some tail up in Washington. I don't know if there's any alum on here, but so that to me was like, that's when NIL came into my world. And knowing that is the limitation for all student athletes today, that, you learn about these things, what you can and cannot do. Like, you can't sell your name can't sell autographs and can't really make money, but little nuances like that, just to think that that's going to open up so many of the entrepreneurial efforts that many student athletes, this is their time to shine. Like Charlie, we don't all get there, man. We don't all get to the next level. And, my career was cut short. I had concussion issues. I was done in a day. And so those 4 years of life for these student athletes, this is the moment that they're able to really build and capitalize on their NIL value. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that they're going to be less limited and providing more opportunities to benefit themselves and also the things they care about.
Mm-hmm. So to add on to that, Mrs. Carter, so you were a student athlete. So talk to us a little bit about how you would have used NIL. When did you hear about it? And then how do you foresee this changing the college landscape?
Well, of course, being a female athlete, it's very different as far as the opportunities that I guess back then we'll have to say they were illegal presentations for opportunities, because we weren't able to capitalize on our name, image, or likeness. And being a business major, of course, I wanted to understand the whole, I just out of curiosity, I wanted to understand what was going on. So I started asking questions, and I was in college. I played from 86 to 90. And so the Ed O'Bannon case that came out shortly after, well, the discussions that started before the case actually came out, and I was very intrigued by them. I was just interested, and fast forward, now my son is in the league, and it just brought back all these thoughts, because it's hard for me with a business mind and college athletics. It is very challenging to find the line where it has been divided properly, because it wasn't back then. It just wasn't a proper division. It wasn't a proper allocation to the athletes. It just wasn't right. And so now, fast forward, and your child is in that college environment, and just as a professional, the market and the capitalization and the economics that are around that student athlete, and they have no access to any of it. No access to, and they are fortunate for some student athletes, they are in situations where they have been given scholarships and they have been taken care of by this institution. Okay? But these individuals are attached to communities, families, brothers and sisters, and I mean, there's so much more that makes up that student that the college is not even concerned about, and that's where, in my opinion, name, image, and likeness begins to help that community, that family, and also that student athlete that doesn't go to the league or to the pros. They begin to build that foundation of who they are, where they come from, that the whole gamut on, and that was not given to them, and it was theirs. And I'm sorry, I just thought it was very unfair. And, I was all for it. I got so excited when I got to talk to Ed O'Bannon. I mean, it's just, it's long past overdue. And however, we can help as parents, we should help our student athletes understand that value and how they begin to build that value the minute they hit that college. You know what? It's before they hit that college campus. It's while they're in high school.
Mm-hmm.
It's while they're in high school. They can start to learn processes of building their own brand and their own image and their own likeness and carry that with them. It's not hard to do. It should be and it's finally coming to pass. And I'm so glad. I'm off.
I love it. Thank you. So all we heard so far, just from Blake and Mrs. Carter, just talking about, there's a lot of things that can come from this, right? There's also a lot of unknown behind it, but there could be places for student athletes to really lay the foundation for when they don't go pro, right? Or they go pro in something else besides sport.
Right.
So, Luke, if you could just add on to that too, do you have anything to add on how you see the college landscape changing based on this new ruling?
Yeah, Marissa, I think, since you are at the NCAA, it was good to hear you have the tagline of going pro in something else other than their sport, right? And that's so real, right? I mean, that's honest. Yeah. We know 98% of the student athletes are not going to go pro in their sport. And so to Mrs. Carter's point, it's so important that I really want to kind of hammer it home, which is the opportunities for name, image, and likeness. From my perspective, the change that we're going to see is the business mindedness of college student athletes changing, right? We know that there's, and any athlete will tell you that there are issues around athlete identity, right? If we don't have time to go into the psychology and the sociology of that, but we know identity is a challenge. And when you're solely focused on your sport throughout college, it just further kind of pushes that point home. But when now you have the opportunity, whether you're going to do these big type of endorsement deals or not, or whether you're going to lend your name to, charitable opportunities and things like that, these student athletes are going to have the opportunity to learn business in a practical, real world sense. And to me, that's the change that's coming. And that's where, when I think about what we need to see in this new environment is a real commitment to the education of athletes going through this process. Because now, all of a sudden the marketing class that you were taking, in school now has a whole new meaning. The digital storytelling, the social media classes, the economics, all of that has all new meaning. And so for us to be able to make sure that athletes apply that now and understand it based on this name, image, and likeness environment, to me, that is a very positive shift that's going to be coming. Now we can talk about other shifts, but I just really wanted to hammer that home because I think that's something we're going to see. And I think that's where athletes, as we have seen, especially over the last 15 to 20 years, athletes becoming more and more empowered. I think we're going to see this name, image, and likeness opportunity continue to set them up as business-minded professionals in addition to the athletes and students that they are.
Yes. Yeah, great points there. And I think what Luke alluded to with, we're going to see a lot of shifts, right? So right here today, we're talking about the social impact of this and the benefits that name, image, and likeness can bring. But I encourage you all to continue to educate yourselves on the full picture of name, image, and likeness, as it's not cut and dry. And this is going to be for all three divisions, right? So Luke talked about how whether it's a huge endorsement deal or it's not, you know, a Nike or Under Armour or the big things that we're thinking in our head right now, this is still could benefit student athletes that have played all different sports as well. Mm-hmm. So I want to shift a little bit to talk more about this philanthropic charitable organizations, right? So Charlie, I know that you have an organization, a foundation, you and your wife. So do you see this new legislation creating charitable, making it easier for student athletes to create charitable foundations and organizations?
I do believe it will help assist. There have been guys who's done this before, and J.J. Watt being one. I know he started a charity when he was in college, or a foundation in college. Myron Rowe being another one. They, you know, now I think that's going to become the norm with some of the guys using their name to be able to help other foundations and tying themselves to that. I know when I was coming along through not college, but in the pros, you know, I was like Habitat for Humanity. You know, all the things that they were involved in, I was pretty much one of their spokespersons. And so I think you'll start to see some of that, more of the guys and ladies, you know, attaching their names to foundations and also charitable organizations within their community to be able to help those organizations get the resources that they may need to be able to support those families or people that they're servicing. So I think it's great that they get an opportunity, and more eyes will be open towards these because of the educational component that Luke was talking about. And that's very, very important to get the proper education, because if they don't get educated on some of these things, it can be a negative as well, because if they start focusing all their attention on just trying to make the money, and now we're talking about tax implications and all the different things. Yes, it's a great learning experience, but I don't know how many student athletes of the past have left college on scholarship in the negative after they left. But with this could possibly turn into a negative where they make money in college and then they forget about the taxes and all the other things that come along with it. And as I said, it could be a great learning experience, but that's one that I would like to learn probably a little bit later. But I'd like to also learn from someone else. But I just think it's important, the education component for the player, but more importantly for the family, because a lot of times that's where the pressure comes from.
Yeah, so let me ask you as a follow-up, when did you start your foundation? Was it when you were in the league, after?
Yes, my wife and I started our foundation when we were in the league, and most of our resources was spent towards our basketball camp that we established, like my second year in the league, and we did support some other youth organizations that had the same mindset as well. But yes, that's when my foundation was started.
So do you believe that maybe you would have started a little bit earlier, depending if rules were a little bit differently?
More than likely, I would have, yes, attached myself to an organization. I may have gotten a foundation because there was a lot of extra that I could have raised to be able to support, you know, other people. Because as I mentioned, you know, while I was in college, I didn't need much. You know, I saved the little per diem that we got from the bowl games and the weekly per diem for anything that I needed extra. I'm talking about me. I was frugal, and so I was eating all the meals that they provided that was free, you know, and I was eating at my cousin's house, my sister's house, you know, just so I could, you know, make ends meet without spending my own money. But
Well, it's a different day now.
money. I know the extra money that I would probably made off of my name, image, and likeness as far as signing things and any sponsorship deals, you know, probably would have gone into a trust fund or a foundation to be able to help support, you know, whatever cause I would have been a part of.
Thank you. So really quickly, I just want to remind all of the people listening, if you have any questions, please submit them in the question and answer. I know we have some already, and we definitely will get to those, but make sure if there's anything that someone says that, you know, sparks another question or something you've been dying to ask, make sure you put it in there for us. So to keep moving, Charlie, you had mentioned about ways that you could have raised extra money, right? So asking to the group. So Mrs. Carter, if you could talk a little bit about how can name, image, and likeness help student athletes raise money for charitable organizations?
Wow. And it actually, even prior to the whole name, image, and likeness thing, the cool thing about students lending their name to philanthropic interests or to 501c3s is you can do that because you are not gaining, you're not looking to gain anything. And that attachment is not only, I mean, it's something that needs to be taught, and something that a lot of athletes, especially that come from communities that look like me, need to understand that value, because they have been torn and ripped from their communities. And in that, during that process, they have lost the know-how or the understanding or the value that they have, the value in what they have left behind. And so in this, with this whole new movement, and with us doing, helping them focus on the communities that have been left behind, and often, and unfortunately, a lot of times those are that's family and people they grew up with, people that supported them, but they just do not understand how, because they have been removed. And I do believe it was methodical, but they have been removed, and now they don't know how to reattach. And I think that is the important thing, is for us to let them know that this is not, you know, you don't need a move of Congress in order for you to attach yourself to your community and be a viable interest, a viable support for your community or any philanthropic interest.
Thank you. Blake, do you want to add or have anything to add?
No, certainly do. And I think that's one of the things that when we talk about NIL in this era, there is so much attention put on the traditional endorsement deal, like the car dealership, the appearance, the autograph signing, the commercials, the magazine appearance, like trading cards, like all that. Like that is, there's going to be a small percentage that get those type of opportunities, but the majority of student athletes will be able to build NIL value, maximize that value, monetize it, or leverage it to draw attention to causes they care about through online methods, right? Through social media, digital media. Like you are more likely to see a student athlete use GoFundMe to drive awareness and attention to a cause they care about than to ever go out and do an appearance in the community, because they are restricted in their time. I mean, like their influence is online. This entire generation of student athletes are building up their lives. It's through their phone, right? So when you think about those types of things, there are, opportunities or examples of student athletes that are given waivers to use crowdfunding sites to raise awareness for things where there's maybe some, family hardship or catastrophic events or different charitable organizations. But I think they're limited. Like it has to be set up by the school. It's going to be overseen by the organization. And so it's a little bit limiting. But to think that in the future, it will be as easy as like, Kyla, if you think about a student athlete a year from now to be able to go and say, I do want to bring attention to where I'm from. I want to provide assistance to those that have supported me back in my hometown and so I'm going to go to GoFundMe.com and I'm going to, for my entire career in college, allow people to support my roots. If they like me, then I want to leverage their love for me to provide love to my community. And like those types of things, I think are what you're going to expect to see more of, those types of initiatives in terms of leveraging technology to maximize value for everyone, not just the student athlete themselves, but the people and causes they care about.
Thank you. Luke, anything to add, or Charlie, anything to add?
I'll just add briefly. I think, everything that was said is absolutely right. And I think, I pray, so this is all going to go into effect, in 2021. And I pray 2021 is a much different year than 2020 has been. I think we all send up that prayer. But think about where we're at right now, right? COVID is, it's a once in a generation, right? Global pandemic. But the racial inequities and racial injustices that our country is experiencing this time as well, unbelievable. So when you think about 2021, when these rules go into effect, athletes being able to, to Blake's comments, to be able to attach themselves to things that are meaningful, causes that are meaningful, they may not have the time to say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to protest and I'm going to march and I'm going to do these things, but I can raise money for these particular causes that are meaningful to me. So the ability to now do that and lend their name, their image, and their likeness to charitable causes that are important to them can be another way for them to express, that which is important in their lives. And I think we will see much more of that.
Great. Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about social media. We talk about how student athletes can benefit from this. We can't talk about this without talking about social media. So, what role do you see social media having with fundraising and name, image, and likeness, particularly with college athletes?
If I can, I want to did you say Luke? But this is, so our business at Open Doors, this is what we do. We help athletes leverage social media to build and up their NIL value and ultimately monetize it or provide value back to causes they care about. And there's a case study that I'll share with you guys. I think it's really interesting. So athletes today, like if you've been paying attention on social media in the last 6 months, like it has become more and more apparent that athletes are pivotal in our culture, in our communities, in consumer behavior, and what we think, believe, know, trust, like what they stand for, sit for, kneel for, like matters, right? And social media is the way that it's all coming out. So Luke said the word athlete empowerment. And that is we're in that era, like in the era of athlete empowerment in sports. And that's what this decade is going to be defined by. And it's all coming out through social media. And that's kind of like it or love it or dislike it. That's where we all go as a culture. And so when athletes say the right thing, right place, right time, they can create a lot of change. And, we work with groups. You mentioned Habitat for Humanity, Charlie, but then we work with Rebuilding Together, like when DeMarcus Ware is helping rebuild a home in Miami during the Super Bowl week, or American Cancer Society doing, initiatives with Buddy Healed and Coaches, versus Cancer. And then there's this one, though, I think is really intriguing. It's a university. It's a Big Ten university. And they do a fundraising campaign every year, and they use our technology with alumni. And so they used 31 different alumni in a 24-hour period to raise money for their school, right? So it's like a donation day. In 24 hours, these 31 athletes tweeted out 34 posts and generated $3.26 million in donations directly from those tweets. 3.26 million. So when you think about, like, you're scrolling through Twitter just mindlessly or Instagram, like, there's real things that happen when the right people say the right thing, right time. And if you think about the impact that those were alumni. Now, the existing student athletes could have just as well been a part of that and maybe doubled that number, right? But that's the type of impact that social media can have, is that athletes, what they say matters. And this is their channel to connect with the masses. And that is true of professional athletes. And it's maybe doubly true for student athletes because of the love and passion people have for college athletics.
Yeah. And I do want to just add on briefly to that, because I think it's spot on. And from my day job, so as a sports lawyer, work with professional athletes across sports, And so we review, their agents will send us their endorsement agreements, we'll review them. It's rare that we review any endorsement deal that has no social media component. So even if it's an appearance, there's going to be a component that says that that player is going to tweet about it or put it on IG like in advance, like, hey, I'm going to be at this place for this event, during the event, post-event. So it's so rare at the professional level that we see any endorsement or marketing deals that don't have a social media component. With college athletes that have the demands of their time on their academics as well as their sport, I think most deals that we see will absolutely be deals based on social media influencing and promoting services, products, people, etc. on social media.
So do you all feel, and this is open to the group, I'm not sure who wants to take this one first, but do you feel more student athletes will begin to establish charitable foundations, whether that is a GoFundMe, using their social medias, or partner with existing nonprofits, as you talked about, as well sooner due to the new rules? What is the group's thought on that?
Yes, I know down here at Florida State, Marvin Wilson has been a big proponent. He's kind of jumped into the fray, thrown his name into philanthropic organization that he's used his name, image, and likeness to help support that organization and that foundation. And I think, over the course, and we've seen more athletes come out and use their name, image, and likeness to make change, whether they're not going to play for whatever reason that they've set, or they're going to, band together and be unified in the things that they're doing. And so I think there's strength in numbers. And when you start to see athletes come together, and that's another aspect that we probably hadn't looked at, if we can get athletes coming together to use their name, image, and likeness for a certain cause, then you'll probably see those numbers start to go up even more. But of course, athletes coming together can be on your team. And then they have to be within a conference or another, situation where they're going with athletes from a different school. So if you can get your group together, you can help bigger causes and find one or two causes that you want to work with. I know down here at Florida State, they've gotten some goals as a team that they've set, and they've been able to go out and accomplish that. They've raised some money to help fund books and things for one of the inner city schools here to be able to help support them. They've also gone out and done some work at the school to help beautify the school property. And so I think those are things that you'll probably see more of now. I just hope it doesn't die out because of where we are during the times, that this would be something that they can leave as a legacy that other student athletes come behind them will take on this same type of challenge to be able to continue the work that they're doing in their communities.
Yeah, thank you. Mrs. Carter, or do you have anything to add?
Just that this is definitely an education piece. I definitely think that the athletes should be taught this. I mean, there should be, if there were, and this was something I told my son, I wish it was available, when even the kids that are, that end up going pro after their college careers, if there were some sort of program at the college level or even pre-college that explained and broke these things down to these athletes, explain community involvement. And even if that was part of, we always talk about the scholarship package and what they give them, we should make them commit to their communities in the scholarship package, just like they make them commit to doing something on social media when they sign NIL with someone. There are things I think that we could integrate into this system to make sure that the athletes are connected to their community, because they have been disconnected by the same process. So now let's use this process to reconnect them to their communities.
That's one of the things, just piggyback off of Ms. Carter, one of the things I know as a high school coach, I've been working really hard to share with the kids that I coach, is being able to give back to the community. So we've gone out and done some community-oriented things, got involved with some organizations like Hang Tough, who is, families who've gone through cancer in some form or fashion, whether it's their kids or someone in their family. And so we've gone out and just done some community outreach with that organization. And, my sole purpose is just to give our kids that I coach the opportunity to understand what it's like to be a student athlete in a community. Because if they get an opportunity to go to college, that's the one thing that most times you get an opportunity to get involved in the community. And then when you become a professional, it's the same deal. But it's all about connecting with the community, because those are the same people that's going to support you when you're on the court, on the field. And so I just think it's important that, yes, to be able to educate them at an early age. And I think there are a lot of coaches that are doing this for the kids, for doing their program. But it's important that the kids understand why they're doing it.
That's right.
And once they understand why they're doing it, then they can take the ownership to be able to do whatever it is that they're wanting to do. And once they get to college, it's something they're accustomed to doing. And then they may start their own, they may bring it out to where they're asking, how can we get involved in the community? So it's about dropping seeds.
Yeah, and that's I just to add to that. I mean, that's the how, right? So understanding the why, understanding the importance, like Ms. Carter talked about, like Charlie talked about, but then it's the education around the how, because there are so many ways to get involved from a charitable perspective, right? We oftentimes tell, like, especially rookie players that we work with, you don't have to start your own foundation right off the bat. You can partner with organizations that share that mindset that you have, do that for a couple of years, get a sense for it before you just rush into taking on that, legal burden, the governance burden, kind of the tax issues and all that come with your own foundation. And so that education as well that comes with, okay, like the importance of it, the why, and the what's important to you. And then let's start talking about the how, so that they understand what are the right ways, so that they don't get taken advantage of from people who want to just say, oh no, start your own foundation. I'm gonna run it for you. I'm gonna take this percentage of whatever money comes in and all that kind of stuff. They need to understand that perspective as well.
Yep. And go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, well, I was just thinking, that threw me back to Tanja and I. We started with the community foundation. That's where we started. It was a donor advised fund. And so that's the way we started our foundation, in a donor advised fund. And then we branched out and got our own over the course of, some time. And so that's kind of how our philanthropic dollars that we use started.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I want to comment. Like, when we talk about this inside the walls at Open Doors, we use this term that, like, in the NIL era, every student athlete will become a startup. Like, a student athlete is a startup. And what I mean by that is, like, and I know, Mrs. Carter, when you think about Wendell, when he made that transition to the pros, boy, I'm sure he had to get equipped with so much more than he had to when he went into college, because he had to have a business manager, he had a financial advisor, an agent, a rep. Like, there's a lot of people that surround him, and that's being shifted back, 4 years. And it's not for just the 500, players that go pro in the major sports, but to 500,000 student athletes at every campus across the country. And so that's when you talk about the education, the setups and startups. And so that component, just mentally thinking about that each student athlete is going to have the structural foundation in terms of like a startup would, about understanding where they make money, how they make money, the tax implications, all that. But then when you talk about the charitable conditions, and again, not trying to overwhelm, it's like, that's why, Champions for Philanthropy, like groups like this exist, right? To help athletes find and navigate through these things. Because you're not alone. There are people that are so deeply entrenched in college athletics, because it's the one sport that it's in each community, you can reach out and touch it, right? Like if you attended Nebraska, you love Nebraska. If you attended Florida State, you love Florida State, right? Like those things stick with you. And so there's people in those communities that are good people with great experiences that can help you navigate this. And I think that's what's going to be great for student athletes, is that there will be good people with great business experience that can help them get started in their community and find the right path.
Like you really dove into one of the questions that I want to make sure that we get into the audience questions. It's really good to see when a panel warms up, right? And it's like everything's going like, I want you to know this and this. So I know there's a lot of information flowing right now, and I hope you all are taking advantage of this. So what we just talked about, there was so much like about education. Student athletes need to know this, they need to know this, they need to know this. Who's responsible for that in leading those NIL personal branding education sessions? Is it the institutions? Is it third-party companies, agents, lawyers? Talk to me a little bit about who's doing all of that.
Just real quick, one of the things that, and Marissa, this is a compliment to the institutions and to the membership, is that I believe that the best organizations on the planet to educate student athletes would be institutions of higher education, right? Which is fortunate because that's the NCAA as a whole, right? So like there is so many, opportunities for the schools themselves to be the ones that educate and empower. It's just, this is a new thing for college athletics and in athletic direct departments, but it's not new to sports, right? It's not new to the world. So I think that there's opportunities for the schools themselves to eventually be the ones that educate and empower. But as mentioned, like I know Luke could hop on a horn with anybody and like actually tell you what to look for in an endorsement agreement, right? And because he's seen thousands of them, right? And those are the things, like people like that I think are going to become more involved in educating the schools so they can pass on that education or educate the student athletes directly.
I like that. I like the idea of that thought, but I'd have to say I don't agree. And the reason that I don't is because I feel like the NCAA and the college institution the institutions of higher learning have worked so equitably on the other side of that coin, where the student was not afforded the understanding of the value of his NIL. So I don't know that I would trust that the institutions would forthright give all of that valuable information, because it's very, very valuable. And it has been, let's be honest, the institutions have built stadiums and given out scholarships and done a whole lot of stuff with that NIL money. So I don't know that would be the best place to get honest. Because they need to be educated from a place where they are at the advantage. Mm-hmm. They are their advantage is known. They are full breath. And so that's why I think it's people like your company outside of the institution, Luke, who is tied in, people that come from that ilk that will give those athletes. And those are I see these companies starting to happen. We're going to see them popping up everywhere. But I honestly believe that is where we need to find those reputable companies and put those into the packages with these student athletes so they know where to go to understand this NIL stuff properly.
So with Blake taking this side and Mrs. Carter taking this side, I'm gonna be the lawyer. I'm gonna stick right in the middle, right? So I'm gonna say it's got to be a combination. It really is. It's gonna be all of the stakeholders that are gonna have to come together, because schools are notoriously protective of their athletes and their athletic departments, and in certain respects, rightly so, right? So they're gonna have to make sure that they're bringing in the right speakers, educators, practitioners who actually do this work every day, because athletic departments, to Blake's point earlier, athletic departments aren't dealing with the individual athlete name, image, and likeness commercialization, right? They're dealing with the big contracts from the apparel brands and beverage brands and things like that coming in, doing deals with the school. So when an athlete, has a deal presented to them, most of the time they're going to be really two groups of folks that they want to talk to: their family, right, which creates, different pressures, right, that come with that. And usually their player development person or somebody in their coaching staff or athletic department they've built a relationship with. So those people are going to have to be able to be prepared to field some of those conversations and to bring in folks who, I know it sounds self-serving, sorry, but who do this on a regular basis to help educate them on what to look out for. Because let's be honest, right, if you've never seen an endorsement deal, and I'm sure Charlie can talk about this, the first time you see an endorsement deal is the first time you've ever seen it. And so, you don't know what to look for. You don't know what's normal. You don't know if you're being taken advantage of or not. And so you have to be able to have that education to understand, what to look for and whether you're being taken advantage of or not.
Yes. I don't know which side I'm going to be on or from in the middle, but I know I've been blessed to have my wife. She's a lawyer by trade. And so a lot of the contracts that come now, she kind of reads over them, but we also have backup. We have a business manager that if there's a bigger deal that may need another set of eyes, then we take it up the chain. But building a team definitely helps get those checks and balances into place. And I think from an institutional standpoint, you have to have safeguards. Just like, for myself, I had to build a team whenever I was, starting my professional career, and they weren't all on the same team. But they all didn't know each other. And so the only person that they knew was me, because I was the one that was bringing them all together. And so I just think from a collegiate standpoint or a college standpoint, whenever they're talking about the name, image, and likeness and the educational component, they have to go out and do do their research on the relationships that they may have with whomever may be able to provide the best information. And so there may be 2 or 3 companies that do, the majority of the colleges. And so I just think it's important that the student athletes get the information, the right information, regardless of where it may come from.
Yeah, so, that was a lot. I don't know if everybody else is kind of on the edge of their seat, but I'm like, okay, I need to write this down. What side am I on? Like, where did I fall in the middle? So I know that we said we have an hour, but if you all could give me a couple more minutes, I want to make sure we get to some of these questions. So listeners, hold tight, please. So we ended here with getting that education and making sure they're getting right. So one of the questions we have is, we always have those compliance meetings or that NCAA signing day at school where I'm going to go and sign all these papers. I know this is a part of preseason. And in that, those are mandatory, and you're essentially signing away those name, image, and likeness rights. So what measures do you think should be in place to protect athletes from signing away their rights?
So so let's get ready for the next 2 hours of this conversation.
Yeah.
There's so much that you can do there. So let me just try to maybe just give you my perspective as super simply as possible, which is there have to be safeguards and guardrails kind of in place into whatever this new world kind of looks like from a name, image, and likeness perspective, because athletes aren't going to know just in and of themselves what to do and how to handle it. Parents and families as well mostly aren't going to understand what to do and how to even, encourage their son or daughter on, opportunities that may present themselves. And so there's going to have to be this aspect of education that to an extent has to be required. Some base level has to be required on at least getting exposure to what's out there. And I know that there's still, different proposals. The Power Five has their proposal of what they want. They want at least one semester. You have to have one semester where you're not doing any deals before, which could be used obviously to help expose, these student athletes to what opportunities kind of look like. But there have to be those guardrails in place to protect the players. Otherwise, they're going to get taken advantage of. We see it at the pro level all the time. When I review endorsement deals, it's rare that I, come across a document that doesn't have some things that really could be, negotiated to make better protection, to better protect that athlete. And that's going to exist at the college level. And there are going to be so many people that are going to want to come into this space to get that player an opportunity to go do a camp or a clinic, to get them to go show up at some restaurant and sign autographs, or to talk about what they think the season is going to look like, or whatever that might be. So having an understanding of what they're going to be presented with is going to be critically important.
I agree, 100%, because there has to be guardrails and everything. especially when you may not know. Someone needs to protect you because you will get taken advantage of. And I've said this on other shows that, you know, the student athlete has to make sure that he prioritize, you know, his life or her life, because if you're one of the top athletes, you may have 10 endorsement deals or 10 endorsement opportunities, but you're still a student. And so your time may not be, you may not be able to, you know, take advantage of those 10 opportunities. You may have to narrow it down to 2 and make the most of it. And so who's going to help you narrow those down to the 2? And so there's a lot of things that you have to think through, but I'm sure there'll be documents that they'll take to be able to help them with the guardrails when they sign their name, so that they're not signing their name, image, and likeness away, you know, through that whole process. But I just do believe that they have to definitely find a way to stay focused on the main thing or prioritize those things that they may want or what's best for them at the time.
So let me ask one more question before we start to wrap up. We talked a lot about the opportunity that this has to bring, the education that needs to come with this, as well as, you know, who's doing all of that. More of a positive side of all of these things, right? Let's have a real talk for a minute or two on what are the dangers or the dark side of this new ruling of student athletes being able to use their name, image, and likeness.
They're gonna get used.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so
Advantage of.
they're gonna get taken advantage of. And there's one great thing about the NCAA, like ability to provide oversight. Like, is it, Charlie, I know that when you got into the league, and Ms. Carter, you got to see this today, where, you know, there's like those vultures that are coming in, and like as soon as Wendell got done at Duke, somebody asked him to come do autographs somewhere, and everyone in the market says, no, don't do it. But to him, he's like, $1,000? Are you kidding me? And then he goes and destroys his memorabilia deal because he oversigned for the look. Like, so there are going to be those types of things that I think that students got to watch out for, getting taken advantage of. And then also there's the pay for play schemes, like that people are going to try and use this to make to legitimize illegitimate payments to athletes.
Right.
Like that's just the dark side, is to be that to make this fair, you really do need to have systems in place, like the guardrails, if you will, to track everything, to keep bad actors out and good actors in, and good payments through and bad actors, you know, or bad payments out. So
integrity will be a key component, because I've said this before, that you may have a deal where you make, say, whatever the minimum may be, say it's $2,500 that you can make for an endorsement deal, for whatever that may be. Well, that $2,500 can turn into $5,000 because there may be $2,500 in cash, you know, underneath the table, behind closed doors. And now you just put that athlete in harm's way, because if I can make $2,500 above board, and then I know I got a deal on the back end, now my integrity is, am I going to take that $2,500 that can give me or my family an opportunity to have more? And, you know, it's like, now I got to go through that. And I know from an emotional standpoint, if I do take it, now I'm weighing on, if someone is going to rat me out, am I going to get caught? And it's like that whole sneaking, like when we were kids, you know, you sneak around to get something, and then your parents find out and you're like, oh, I'm caught. Or you sit there and you lie about it. And so I just think there's a lot of things that you have to navigate through when you really don't have those guardrails in place.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, right? So Blake and Charlie hit the nail on the head. The only thing that I'll add to that is, you know, it's just thinking about how athletes could be taken advantage of. And it's what we see at the pro level, you know, all the time. And it's just, you know, trusting the wrong advisors, advisors and agents having you sign agreements that aren't in your best interest. Right. I mean, and this is where you hope that the NCAA puts those rules into effect so that, you know, to literally if you're gonna be an agent that wants to work with a player, you have to agree that your agent agreement is gonna look like this. I mean, it's kind of how it has to be, because we could look at public records, right? And the lawsuit with Zion Williamson, and the marketing agency that he was with, and the contract that they had him sign. That contract is part of public record, and that's just a contract that had him tied in for at least 5 years, and he couldn't fire his agent, unless except for cause, like in perpetuity. Like there's no way. But if you're a player, if you're now an 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old, student athlete, and somebody puts a contract in front of you and they want to advance you some money, you're just thinking, yeah, I want the money, but you need to understand what is it that you're signing. And so there's going to have to be those specific guardrails in place so that agents can't lock in a player, especially an elite player, once they're a freshman all the way through until when they go into the pros, right? And same thing with endorsement deals, of being able to have that ability to terminate agreements where necessary is going to be important. But again, it comes back to those guardrails and what that looks like. Otherwise, athletes will absolutely be taken advantage of.
Yeah. And that little process that we do with the professional athletes, where they put certain people around them as they're getting ready to, go into the professional arena, that process probably will need to start now for kids that are in high school. Mm-hmm. They will need to have attorneys. They will need to have, because if they don't have those guards in place, they are most definitely going to be taken advantage of without question.
Yeah, this has been such a good conversation, very engaging, and I hope everyone is having the same type of thoughts and seeing that this is really complex, and this decision is definitely going to create change within the college landscape. But we got to make sure that we do it right, and making sure that the student athletes are protected and educated through this process. So to all of the panelists, take about 30 seconds and just, what would you leave the audience with, the students that are listening? What advice would you give to a student athlete looking to make a social impact under name, image, and likeness?
Hey, start with why, like in terms of social impact. Okay. Every great cause-based initiative and campaign has a true connection between the person that's advocating for it and the outcome in which they're advocating for. So, you can generate revenue, you put your name on something, but you will only maximize that opportunity if you truly believe in it. And that is true not just for charitable causes, but for anything that you support, in leveraging your NIL. But you will maximize your value if you believe in the thing in which that you're tying your name to. And so that's what I would say, is like, be decisive with what you partner with, and intentional about the way that you build your brand and who you align with.
And I would say understand the value that you have as a student and who you are. Understand your value and don't sign it away for anything. Don't sign anything. That was one of the things I told my son. If someone's bringing you something to sign, that means it's over your head. Don't sign anything. You take it to the professionals that understand what it is you're signing, because most of the times they don't know. So I want students, please understand how valuable and precious and wonderful you are to your community, and know your value, and don't sign it away.
I would say start slow. There may be a lot of opportunities out there, but start slow, and build a foundation. And the foundation it doesn't always have to lead to finances. It can be building relationships that may be able to help you long-term. And so those are very, very important that I like to share with college student athletes is, you're on scholarship, you're at a university, use the university. A lot of times, they're using your name, image, and likeness, but use the university to be able to build a network of people, so that when you do leave college, you're able to have a network of people to be able to pull from.
Right on.
Absolutely. So first I was going to say, Mrs. Carter, I wish I could just take a little clip of you saying, don't sign anything, and just play it on a loop for like all my clients. Don't sign anything. But I would just say, like what everybody else has said, education, I know we've harped on that all this time, but I say, take that ownership on yourself. go slow, like Charlie said, and leverage the platform and the resources that you have at whatever institution you're at. There are alumni, both former student athlete alums who have gone on and played professionally potentially, but other, folks who have gone on to start businesses and start foundations and be, executives and things like that. Leverage your time as a student athlete to get to know those folks and get firsthand education so that you can understand the various ways in which you can do things. You can start to build that network and build those relationships. And you get that firsthand education without waiting for someone else, the institution or stakeholders or whomever, to educate you. You take that on yourself. There are so many stories about what LeBron has done, what Kobe did in terms of putting people around them and being able to build relationships and that understanding, that empowerment. Take that on, read, explore, and get exposed to these different areas so that you can be, more equipped when you have those opportunities to potentially do it for yourself.
Right. Thanks, Luke. And if you use that clip of her, you got to get with her first to see if you can use her name, image, and likeness.
You know it.
Can't just don't let him take your rights, Mrs. Carter. But I want to thank you all for your time today. This has been an amazing conversation, and I am honored to be able to be here with you all to moderate. I'm going to pass it back over to Michelle to wrap us up.
Wow. Thank you, Marissa, Charlie, Luke, Mrs. Carter, and Blake for that amazing discussion. We really appreciate you all sharing your time and perspectives. We're going to have to check with the panelists to see if they're willing to have a part 2 of this great conversation. To our viewers, thank you again for joining us for this important conversation. Alicia and I also want to give a special thanks to Kendall Ellis and Christian Tavares for all of their help in making this event possible. Please be sure to follow us on social media using the handle @Champions for Philanthropy to keep up with our work and find out about future events. Again, thank you everyone for joining and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.